Everyone, glad for all of you to join us on this rainy day. We have been batting zero. I don't know baseball, but really batting badly with weather. Our last event for seniors or older adults in housing was the one and only kind of potential snow day that we had when we were trying to be in person, but ended up having to go virtually. But glad to be here in person, and we know we have some other colleagues joining us as well too, and so we'll let them roll in, but I want to be respectful of your time. I'm Brenda Clement, if I don't know you, although I think I see many friendly faces, and I'm Director of Housing Works Rhode Island, and Housing Works is a research and policy organization housed here at Roger Williams University, and as you know, we try to show the connectedness between all things housing, and try to show why housing matters for so many levels and so many ways, and its ties to both economic growth and development, but also to improving health and education outcomes. And very pleased to be joined here today by all of you and many powerful women in the room as we talk about women in housing. And so hope to have some time for us to be able to continue to talk and interact after our formal program as well too. So again, thank you for your coming today, but also thank you for the work that you do every day to address issues around women in housing. Our team is going to, one of our team members, Annette Warren, our research and policy director, will be up in a few minutes to present the data in the infographics, but also wanted to thank Bryce Cali, a member of our team, and Amy Mccalla, who you've met at the door for all of the work that they do every day to get our work done. And so I'm very appreciative of their efforts as well. And then thanks to our colleagues at Roger Williams and Tech and event support and others who help us make these events happen too. It's for always working with a small nonprofit where I was used to stacking the chairs by myself and carrying the catering in. It's really nice to have a team to help support a lot of that work. So, and then also before we get started and before I introduce our panelists, I wanted to welcome a still relatively newcomer to Rhode Island, our new state HUD director, Cali. Cali, want to wave and welcome, and thank you for joining us today. Cali's the new Nancy Greer-Smith, for those of you who are can know that reference better. But Cali brings a long experience with HUD, having worked in both Connecticut and Maine offices as well too. And so, as we know, somebody who can speak HUD is always very valuable. And so we welcome you, Cali, and we look forward to further collaboration with you as well too. So. With that, I'm going to just turn briefly to our panelists and give them, if they wanted to, say just a few words of welcome before we call Annette up to go through the infographics. Oh, one more thing before I forget, though, before I do that. Huge thanks to the Women's Fund, who is funding this work. Do I see anyone from Women's Fund? Yeah. Oh, there you are, right in front of me. Call on you to say a few words, if you don't mind. So, come on up. You have to haze here. Sorry about that. No worries.
Okay. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My name, for those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Angela Mccalla. I am the Policy and Advocacy Program Director for the Women's Fund of Rhode Island. And on behalf of the Women's Fund of Rhode Island, we are extremely excited for the wonderful work that Housing Works Rhode Island will share along with our guest speakers today. And so just to share quickly, the Women's Fund of Rhode Island was proud to provide funding towards the research and the advocacy it will inform. Our mission really is to invest in women and girls through research, advocacy, grant making, and strategic partnerships designed to achieve gender equity through systemic change. As a grant maker, we use a participatory review process in which community volunteers are trained to use a gendered lens in evaluating proposals and who then recommend which proposals should be funded. Because of our volunteers come from the community, they have lived experience that informs their recommendation around the funding. So the proposal that Housing Works Rhode Island submitted quickly rose to the top because housing is a foundational component of the social determinants of health, and women are constantly at a disadvantage in securing affordable quality housing because of the gender wage and wealth gaps that exist in our state. The research and infographic presented today will be used as tools to inform people like us and policymakers and advocates so that we can continue fighting for affordable quality housing. And so really, I want to say thank you to Housing Works Rhode Island for leading such an important work. Thanks so much.
Thank you, and we very much appreciate the support. And as we come to a close on Women's History Month and reflective of all of the great contributions that our four mothers have made to history over the many years, but also, as you point out, the continuing challenges that our sisterhood faces as well too. And so again, we'll talk more about that with Annette. But turning now to our panel of speakers who will be reacting afterwards. But all of them are very familiar faces to you, I'm sure. So Senator Coleman. Megan Coleman is, I don't know what district number you are, 15. It's my district, I should know, that's where I live. But really proud to have such a great champion at the Senate on housing issues as well. Everyone knows our Lieutenant Governor, Sabina Matos, and Sabina has been a stalwart supporter of affordable housing in her role as LG, but also first words out of her mouth when she declared her candidacy was housing, and grateful to know that that it remains a top priority for her as well too. So thank you again for your time. And then last but certainly not least, Representative June Speakman, who is doing an unbelievable work at the State House with the Low Mod Commission and soon to be rebranded as more the Affordable Housing Commission, I think we're calling it, and trying to kind of dive in deep on the details about how housing gets built, what are the obstacles, what are the incentives that we need to do to increase the production and supply of housing. And both our colleagues in the General Assembly will talk a little bit more about their legislative packet later as well too. And then June is also a Roger Williams colleague, and so she gets to both of them hear a lot from me, but June in particular gets even more nagging from me because of Roger Williams stuff. So I appreciate her patience all the time. So. And I also I see a couple of other Roger Williams colleagues have joined us as well too, our community partners, Keith Catone from Cycle, and I thought I saw Marcella from LPI, and Jen from the Center for Justice. We're all community partners here at the Providence Building, so we appreciate you coming and supporting us today. So with that, I will turn it to our fabulous research director to run us through the infographics. You have a copy of it on your table, on your chair rather, and ask you to turn it over to Annette. One more, while Annette gets set up, all of our graphics have been done for a long time by a wonderful firm based in Newport, Lacuna Design. They've been with us for years, and I think you'll agree the quality of their work is just top notch. So we're a husband and wife team that does a wonderful work. Annette, take it away.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Brenda. Thank you very much, Women's Fund. Thank you very much to our speakers, and to all of you who are here this morning, and for all of you who work in this field and deal with all of the factors that we're going to be reviewing today. As Brenda mentioned, we are still in Women's History Month, so I'm very excited to be talking about this important topic. I also just want to, as Brenda mentioned, shout out to our Housing Works team, and Ariana Clark, who is not here today, but she is, sorry, I got
We'll deal with
Ariana Clark, who is our Bonner Community Fellow from Brown University Square Center, who did a lot of the work on this. So. All right, so I am going to start with, it's a two-sided graphic, as you all know. I'm going to do more of a side-to-side. The first side of the graphic deals with all women households. The second side of the graphic deals with women households that are 50 and older. Some of that work is work that we are doing for work in senior housing, older adults in housing, that we'll be putting out this fall. It looks at the demographics and a financial picture before we really get into the housing topics. The demographics really give us give us a clue into the size of the issues that we're dealing with. And then the finance picture really gives us the aspects of how do we get out of this and how can we bring women up to being able to afford homes and build more that they can afford. So right here we're looking at a baseline number of human beings who are women, and the PUMS only measures male and female, so there are no other genders represented here. And it is, women outnumber men just by about over 30,000, 51% to 49%. And when we look at women by age, we're looking at more of a 60-40 breakdown in terms of women under 50 and those 50 and older. Where it starts to get pretty interesting is when we start to look at women age groups, and the first one on this slide looks at gender compared to men, and then we're going to look at race and ethnicity within women's age groupings. So while the percentages on the left between women and men as they age are quite startling, well, they were to me and definitely to my husband, to grasp the situation at hand, we should really consider the numbers behind those ratios. So women aged 75 to 84 number almost 31,000 compared to men who are a little over 22,000. And then 85 and older, here in Rhode Island, there are over 17,500 women in that age category compared to men of only 8,184. So as we start to get into how we care for people who are older and how they live, I think these numbers are important to keep in mind. When we're looking at the age groupings by race and ethnicity, we see the same trends that we do with Rhode Island's overall population, whereby older agers represent a less diverse population, both racially and ethnically. We heard a little bit about this in our stakeholder interviews that we conducted for the older adults in housing work that I've mentioned. Sometimes the workforce, the caregiving workforce who is more diverse, and the older population that they are caring for, it can be an opportunity for a lot of learned, shared experience in these two groups. When we're looking at households, what we are looking at is we are looking at male and female and couple households. Male or female households can live alone, couples can live together, those couples can be married or cohabitating. Any of those households can live with children under 18. Male or female households can also live with other family members, or they can live with unrelated adults. In the analysis that follows, we group those who live with family members and with unrelated adults in male and female households together. So overall, we see that female households are about 30% of Rhode Island households, a little over 122,000 households. Looking at just female households of 50 plus, which is nearly 80,000, a significant majority of them, 71%, live alone. That is 56,800 households of women living alone at age 50 or older. By comparison, only 55% of male households in that age range live alone. Whatever that reason is, whether it's choice or cultural issues, it has implications for how we consider their housing situations as they age. As we move into the financial picture, I want to set the stage by looking at the type of analysis we use in the Housing Fact Book that are called income quintiles. So basically, we break down Rhode Island households by 5 equal groups, and we derive these income quintiles. So we label them as lowest, which is that 0 to 26,000, lower middle, 26 to 54, middle, 54 to 86, upper middle, and then highest. And what you see on the left is that when we look at what kinds of households are comprised within the income brackets, we see that female households comprise nearly 60% of the lowest income quintile, more than double that of men. As we progress, even within the second lowest income quintile, it is female households that comprise the majority at 41% within that income quintile. It's common knowledge within the research community that households with couples, both married and cohabitating, generally have higher incomes, and you can easily see that here as we move up the income scale. The dominance of those households from middle to upper middle, and especially at the highest income levels. On the right, we take a snippet from older women households and see that living alone appears to have significant consequences related to income groupings, with 53% of those households falling into the lowest income quintile. Looking at the financial picture as measured by the federal government's poverty guidelines, I want to first remind everyone of what those guidelines are, especially how very low they are. So low, in fact, that many programs serve higher percentages as a measure for their eligibility for their programs, sometimes more than double. We've chosen 225% of poverty here as this middle ground, and some programs are going to be a little more than that, some are going to be a less, but it is a good benchmark for us to use today. So very quickly, the stark note at the top referring to female households comprising 53% of those Rhode Island households that live below the poverty line. Right below that, as we analyze by types of female households, we once again see that those households of women alone make up more than half of those living in poverty. When we look at poverty across households by age range, adding across the ages, we see that women under 70 have somewhat higher rates of poverty. That may have to do with household size, but we would have to cross-tabulate that to know more. So finally, as we move into the housing conversation and really think about housing affordability, I want to begin by grounding women's tenure and cost burdens from the 2022 Housing Fact Book's housing costs for the state. So these reference rent and home costs for 2021. Given what we've now learned about women households and finances, it's likely not surprising to learn that when it comes to housing, the majority of women households, 54%, are renters. In terms of numbers, we are looking at slightly more than 64,000 households compared to nearly 54,000 who are owners. Of these 64,000 renter households, 58% of them are cost burdened, meaning they spend more than 30% of their income on housing costs. 30% of women renter households spend more than 50% of their income on housing, which makes them severely cost burdened. Think of that, more than 50% of your income going just to your housing costs. Of owner households, we are looking at 47% of women households who are cost burdened and 22% of them severely cost burdened. Lastly, we took a specific look at those women households with children under 18 years of age and learned that 43% of those that rent and 24% of those who own are severely cost burdened. Combined, this represents more than 8,000 households, specifically 6,587 renting, 1,700 owning. When you're spending more than 50% of a household's income, you can be considered housing insecure. You may be more than just one paycheck or accident away from losing your home. Lastly, in turning to tenure and cost burdens for older women households, we see only the majority of women in the 50 to 59 age group as renters. However, even in the age groups above 60 and older, 41 to 46% of those households rent. 50% of older women households who live alone also rent. When we look at their cost burdens, we are looking at 64% of owners in these older age categories for women who have a mortgage are cost burdened, 64%. 37% are severely cost burdened. Of those without a mortgage, that would be 44% are cost burdened. So those housing costs in that case for an owner would be your taxes, insurance, and those other costs that pertain to owning a home outside of a mortgage. And 20% of them are severely cost burdened. Of older women households who live alone, 64% are cost burdened, and 32% are severely cost burdened. So with that, I am looking forward to our panel's insights into not just the data, but the solutions that we can propose to help women prosper and live more affordably. Thank you.
Thanks, Annette.